Hey, everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Growing in Real Time. And what is our tagline for that, Aaron?
Transformation through conversation.
Transformation through conversation. I need to commit that to memory because, and we have to give a shout out to our brother Daryl Carlson for giving us that. But yeah, transformation through conversation. And so we're going to talk about things that are transformative. That will help you see things through a different lens, break some paradigms, and just give a fresh outlook on things. And as a result, we will all together grow in real time. So
Yep.
I'm Derrick Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson. Great to be with everybody. Great to be with you, Derrick.
Yep, good to be with you. Good to be with everybody. And we didn't have a show last week, but I stepped on. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I had a little rant that I did.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah, so since we weren't together, I said, "Well, I'm going to talk about something political." So I talked about something political, and it's just this shit show going on in Washington, and I'm not going to go any deeper than
There's
that.
a lot to talk about.
Yep, lots to talk about. But that being said, what's in the glass tonight, man?
So I'm having a Kentucky Mule, sort of.
There you go.
Ginger ale and bourbon.
Nice, nice. I'm going light. I have a Michelob Ultra. Actually, I have two of them. Yeah, super light, super duper. Because when I get finished with the show, I got to run to Walmart and get some food and start cooking. Because we're celebrating my birthday early. Because my siblings are going off to South Africa next week. So that's what we're doing here.
I got to say something about the beer. Is this a family show now?
No.
I heard a guy last week talking about beer. He was explaining to a group the difference between ale and lager and IPAs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And going into this long explanation, and he says, stuff like what you're drinking. He says it's like making love in a canoe. He said it's fucking close to water.
that is clutch. It's fucking close to water.
You're making love in a canoe. He likes IPAs, so he is making the case for IPAs.
So let me say this about this because like Michelob Ultra is not by any stretch of the imagination good beer. It's
making love in a canoe.
Hang on for a second. My wife just tried to call me and then she stopped. Hang on for a second.
No
I'm having a perfect storm of interruptions today. But we're going to talk about Neville Goddard. And the reason why we're talking about Neville Goddard is just like how we used to, as preachers of the Christian gospel, we used to talk about the champions of faith. And, people like Smith Wigglesworth and Catherine Coleman and Billy Sunday and so on and so forth. And how their teaching it was relevant to today's Christian ministry. And so since neither of us is doing Christian ministry anymore, we're doing things more along the metaphysical, mystical lines. We're going to talk about some of the champions of that, people who have done these things and have been successful.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, we're talking about Neville Goddard. And I got a book. It isn't a book by him, but it's a book about him, and it talks about bringing the right now into your future, or bringing your future into the right now. In other words, what Neville Goddard, one of his central teachings was that there is no past, present, and future. That everything is right now. And so the objective is to purge the now of the past and to bring the future into the now.
I like that so much.
And this is really, really, really key because when you talk about time, because time is a human construct, right? We use that to measure. It's really to make a really short point of it. It's a measurement of our own mortality.
Yeah,
that's really what time is. It's a measurement of our mortality. And I've often taught this. I even taught this in Christian ministry, that the only point in time that any of us holds the title deed to is right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the past has been sold or foreclosed on, and the future hasn't been closed on. But you have the title deed to right now. So any decisions that you make them considering that, you know, based on where you are. Now, why is that important with Neville Goddard's teaching? Because if right now encompasses all of our potential realities, that means that we should be able to call something from our quote unquote future into our right now, and influence, inform, and impact our right now. Mm-hmm. So as I learn about this guy and read about him, I get really excited. And there are two things that I want to bring out about Neville Goddard early into the conversation. Number one, this was a guy that didn't have any scandals. You know, there were no financial scandals, no sexual scandals. There was nothing. You know, I won't say that he's pure as the driven snow. I don't know. But what I will say is that the evidence against him being a dirtbag is very scant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whenever you run across that kind of a person, you're like, oh, okay. You know, there is a moral component to the metaphysical component. And I think that actually adds power to the teaching. Mm-hmm. You know, because the higher the degree of integrity of a person, the more validity, intrinsic validity that their teaching possesses. Mm-hmm. Right. So, long story short, Neville Goddard was born and lived in Barbados in the Caribbean, and you know, Barbados is a very interesting place. Like most of the Caribbean, it was colored by European colonialism and slavery. And so Barbados has a very diverse and rich cultural background. That there are people of African descent, people of European descent, people of Asian descent, people of Indian descent, and it's a big melting pot. I've heard somebody say once that Barbados is like Jamaica on steroids. Mm. So a lot of what Neville Goddard taught and a lot of who he was as a human being was tempered or colored by where he was from and the lifestyle that was adjacent to that. Mm-hmm. So all of these things we want to factor in all of these things as we talk about Neville Goddard. But this the big thing is, and this is where I'm gonna say this and shut up, is that why is he relevant today? Mm. And that's the big question, because you'll look at some people who are historical figures, who were teachers, who were mentors, who were gurus or whatever, and some of the things what they say has a lot of validity today. And there's some people that they say they had their moment and their moment is past, and what they talked about or what they did in the past is no longer relevant. And I'm gonna say something, a shot across the bow to all of my friends who are Black conservatives, right? Because I think that one of those people is Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was a guy who talked about some things that made sense at the time he said them, but I don't think that they really resonate today. And you can kick me or spit at me if you want, but I'll stand by that. And so anyway, the point that I'm getting at, Aaron, before I kick it back over to you, is that I think that we need to share with our audience some of these champions of metaphysical or metaphysical and mystical teaching, and show how these things can be relevant in people's lives, because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. At some point, the teaching, whatever it is that's being taught, has to have some kind of practical application.
Yeah.
And I think that Neville Goddard's teaching has a ton of practical
Yeah.
application.
Yeah. Lots of tributaries there I could run off on, but just to start where you left off with the why is Neville and other New Thought teachers like Neville relevant for today?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking a lot about this because while you were gone, vacationing,
Yeah.
I picked up a couple of books that were on my bookshelf. Well, on my bookshelf and in my Kindle, and I found one that I had bought years ago. Someone had recommended, and it was called "Ye Are Gods," and I can't remember the name of the author. Like, really obscure book, right? But I get 3 or 4 pages into the book, and the person is quoting the angel Moroni, which is obviously Mormon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to research the author to find out like what her deal was. And she's sort of a contemporary of Neville and New Thought and all of this stuff. And dude, that book lit me up, man. Like, I'm reading it, I'm just like, this is incredible stuff. And it's coming from a Mormon. Now, she was excommunicated from the Mormon church, et cetera, et cetera. But she's basically teaching many of the same principles of New Thought that Neville Goddard taught, that Joseph Murphy taught, who was a contemporary of Neville Goddard, also taught by Neville's teacher. And then you had E.W. Kenyon about the same time. He's coming up through the Christian Baptist stream. And they're all kind of essentially saying the same thing, which puts agency back with the person. They all have their own kind of structure of how they think this works. The New Thought people like Neville, the agency is entirely within the human being. In fact, Neville went so far in some of his teachings as to say that the human imagination is God. Kenyon, of course, was rooting his in the scriptures and positive confession. And then you've got this lady who's rooting it in the Book of Mormon and quoting Joseph Smith and the angel Moroni and stuff like that. And I'm not advocating for any of those approaches necessarily, but what was so fascinating to me was that this all kind of sprung up around the same time period without any evidence of cross-pollination. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's an idea that was worthy of its time. You know what I'm saying? It came up in all these different iterations, but all had basically the same principles. Your faith, your imagination, your agency is what makes the difference when it comes to health and prosperity and things like this. And I got to thinking about today. I got to think about those time periods, and I got to thinking about today and how they parallel. And there was a lot of distrust back then in medical science, because they couldn't cure a lot of stuff. It was before a lot of, before we knew a lot. We didn't have a lot. And so you got people still losing children to stuff that we don't lose children to today. People dying of things that we don't die of today. A lot of this teaching came post depression time period, right?
Yep.
If you look at parallels to today, like, our medical system is way advanced, but you can't freaking access it, at least not in America. And when you do access it, oftentimes you're accessing a lack of expertise. I'll just be honest about it. People that have, doctors that, and no offense to doctors, but they're doctors that graduated medical school in 1985, and they've gone to their, continuing education stuff, but probably didn't pay attention. Not up on the latest stuff. They're doctors that are like that. Yep. You got family practitioners that are nurse practitioners. No, nothing against nurse practitioners. I go to a nurse practitioner myself, and I love her, and she's been great. But the difference in training, 1 year of master's nursing training versus 4 years of medical school, there's going to be a difference in competency, especially when it comes to diagnosing various different things. And so I think our medical system sucks. I think it absolutely sucks. It's great, but it's a freaking, if you can access it, it's great.
Yep.
It's also a assembly line, like, I've had surgery twice in the last few years, and I've talked to my surgeon, both surgeons, a total of 30 minutes probably.
Yeah.
Because they're coming right before the surgery. You maybe you meet them just to meet them, in a pre-op visit, and you're meeting with their PA or their nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
And then they come in 15 minutes before the surgery. You've already taken the cocktail that they give you to chill you out, whatever. And then maybe you do, or maybe you don't see them after you come out of anesthesia. So it's just this assembly line kind of thing. And so I think that we're living in a time period where people are distrusting our systems. They don't have good access to medical care. We're living in a time period when inflation is absolutely out of control, where wages for the last 40 years have not kept up with inflation at all. And there are a lot of similarities, right? And so what's amazing about all of these iterations of Neville Goddard teaching and New Thought teaching is that it puts the agency back at you and removes your dependency upon whatever system it is that you think you need in order to benefit. So, you can prosper in spite of economic conditions. You can be healthy in spite of the advancement of medical technologies or the accessibility of medical technologies if you'll apply these principles. And when you look across the board and you just boil it down to the basic principles, all these people back then were saying the same thing. And so I think that it is very relevant for today and something that we need to take seriously and not just dismiss as magical thinking or hocus pocus or whatever. Because the thing is, like, there was an audience for this back then, and I just don't believe that people are so gullible. I'm not so cynical as to believe that people are so gullible that when it comes to things like their health and their financial welfare, that you're going to garner an audience and have the longevity of someone like Neville Goddard if your principles are complete bullshit and don't work at all. And so I think it's something that we need to weigh seriously and take seriously. It's certainly something that I take seriously, that I've proven out in my own life and seen work in my own life. So I'm really excited about, sharing this with our audience on Friday nights.
Yeah. And I want to say this too, because, me, my focus generally stems from, what is tangible, measurable, and repeatable. And so I'm a scientist, but not a materialist, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think that there are phenomena, what we call supernatural, that are tangible, that they are measurable, and they are repeatable. And I want to say this because the teachings that Neville Goddard and other New Thought, New Age teachers embraced is that there wasn't an exact science to this. In other words, it was not formulaic, that there was a strong subjective component to it, but at the same time, it got results, and it got results over and over again. And I look at people like Neville Goddard and Dolores Cannon and people like that, and say, okay, Reverend Ike,
Yep.
That they produced some things that this was repeatable. It was tangible to the people who were receiving it, and it was measurable. In other words, you could say, okay, I know that if I do X, Y, and Z, it's going to produce X, Y, and Z result, right? So I want to walk through like a simple, Neville style exercise.
Before you do that, let me just speak to the science part of it, because what's so interesting is that a lot of the leaders in New Thought, maybe not Neville specifically, but a lot of them attached science to what they were doing. Reverend Ike attached science to what he was doing. He called it the science of living. Mary Baker Eddy called it Christian Science. Ernest Holmes called it science of mind. There's another group, the Divine Science Church. And so I think that they were taking the scientific method and applying it to their principles and being very pragmatic from a scientific perspective, but they were calling it science of mind. And so where I think the difference is between, like, when you say subjective, tangible, measurable, and repeatable, I think it goes back to Rene Descartes, right? Rene Descartes separated the mind and matter completely. I think, therefore I am. That's the only thing that I can be certain of. And as a result of those that built on Descartes' theories, we inherited this belief in our culture that the mind has no effect on reality because it's just trapped inside of our own skull and it doesn't go past our skin. And I think that they were challenging not science, they were challenging Cartesian influence upon science and trying to take the scientific method and apply it back to the mind and apply it back to the principles that they were doing. And in fact, use that term in everything that they were doing. So I just wanted to throw that in when you're talking about science, because I find that fascinating. And I think the way you're thinking about it is very much the same way they were thinking about it.
Yep.
And I think if we take science out of the laboratory and look at it as knowledge that can produce a repeatable pattern, then I think we're on pretty solid ground.
Yep. And to piggyback on that, I think that where we get kind of caught up is we get caught up in what I call the knowledge loop.
Yeah.
And we're acquiring knowledge for the sake of not acquiring knowledge.
Oof, that's so good there.
But wisdom is applied knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like it's taking what you know and assigning it some practical application or practical value. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I think what I think a lot of these New Thought teachers were doing is that, okay, this is a principle. Okay, a principle. So for example, like let's say a principle, gravity is a principle. Mm-hmm. Right. And gravity works whether you believe in it or not.
Right.
But if you take the time to understand gravity, then you can start talking about how you can manipulate phenomenon within the context of gravity to achieve different things. You know, like for example, the lever, right? The lever helps to move objects that are much heavier than the person that's moving them. You have aerodynamics, right? Which aerodynamics help you to, produce a lift, which helps you to overcome temporarily the force of gravity. Mm-hmm. So what I think people like Neville Goddard were doing is this, okay, here are these are principles. These are what we know, what's in the earth, what's in the cosmos, if you will. And these are the things that we could do to manipulate these rules to benefit ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I'd start off, I was walking through this.
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, man, that was a good interruption. In the words of John Lewis, that was good trouble. So I don't have a problem with that, man. You are a progenitor of good trouble.
I love that. I'm gonna add that to my bio.
Progenitor of good trouble.
Aaron Tomlinson has been called a progenitor of good trouble.
Hey, that's great. Yeah, man. You need to put that in your bio.
I'm gonna remember that.
Yeah. So what Neville would do is he would say, clearly identify what you want, and let's just start there. And why this is so important? Yeah. Because, gosh. I told you about something that I want, and I'm really tempted to say it, publicly, but
don't do it. Don't do it.
I don't want to do it. But let's just say this: I am totally focused on this one thing.
Yeah. To be a huge game changer for you. And
what's that?
It'd be a huge game changer for you too.
It would be. Yeah. And so, and that would cascade into some other things that I know I want. Right. Like there are things that I want, like a car that I want, or a house that I want, or to retire my wife from work and that kind of thing. So I have like a lot of wants that I have clearly identified. And honestly, folks, if you can't identify what you want, when you get it, you don't know if you got what you wanted or not.
Yeah.
So you got to clearly identify it. It's like, sit down and think, is it the job? Is it the relationship? Is it the relationship with your family or with your kids? Is it your standing in the community? Whatever it is, clearly identify it and write it down and speak it as though it were. So I'll go on to the next point. So Neville would say, choose a brief scene implying it already happened. And that's what I was just saying just then, is that if you begin to imagine, and it's not just imagination, it's not just daydreaming, it's like seeing the result as if it's already done. And that's the other thing that we need to do. And then after that, we need to learn to relax.
Yep.
You know, people say trust the process, and I remember I used to get mad when people would say trust the process, especially when it came to Christian ministry, because I'm like, oh, I want this to happen. I want this to happen. And what happens is that, you know, we trade our Christian cloak for a metaphysical cloak, and we say, okay, well, now I can get it exactly when I want it. No, it still doesn't work that way. There's still a process. And so the first part on the road to manifestation is to learn to relax. That when you're pent up and really leaning into what it is that you're trying to do, and you press into that, you press into that, you press into that, you're taking yourself out of relaxation. You're creating undue tension, and that tension will inhibit your manifestation.
100%.
Yeah. So, you know, another thing too is that when we talk about relaxation, we want to be near sleep, relax. Not necessarily sleep, although sleep has its purpose, but you want to relax close to sleep. And then the next thing is experiencing the scene in the first person with sensory detail. In other words, like if you get into a Rolls Royce, and I've had this experience, so I can say this, right? You get into a Rolls Royce, there is an aroma, a smell. There are things that speak to your sense of touch. There are things that speak to your sense of sight and hearing. You know, the sound of the door closing on a Rolls Royce is something special. It's an auditory delight, right? And so you have to experience the scene. You know, you're creating a scene, implying as it already happened, but you want to experience the scene. You want to be immersed in it. You want a full IMAX Technicolor, 3D experience.
Yeah, it's the difference between seeing it through your own eyes versus you're watching a video that someone made of you. So if in your imagination you're seeing yourself experiencing these things, that's not what Neville's talking about. You want to put yourself in the movie.
Right.
You want to put yourself on the play. You want to see it through your own eyes in your imagination. And that's super important. Super important.
And the next thing he said, you know, feel the relief or the certainty of fulfillment. In other words, how would you feel if you, and I ask people all the time, how would you feel if you had $1 million right now? Yeah. I mean, discretionary money that you could do whatever you want with it.
Right.
How would you feel? How would that make you feel? Would that make you feel relaxed? Would that make you feel joyous? Would that make you feel grateful? How would that make you feel? And so one of the things is that when you have what it is that you're trying to manifest, or that you're manifesting for, that there should be a sense of relief. Like, whoa, that really happened. And so we need to feel the relief or certainty of fulfillment.
Let's do this in real time, growing in real time.
Okay.
Because Neville taught the feeling is the secret, right?
Yep.
And I've been going through my own transformation. I told you about it a little bit earlier. But when you said that, I did a mental exercise inside my brain, you know, and I got an insight into myself. So I'm going to be really transparent and vulnerable here. Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm going to, because that's just who I am. But you said, how would you feel if you had $1 million? And I took myself through that exercise. And there's a a blessing and a problem. So you're going to coach me through this.
Okay.
I'm putting you on the spot.
All right, no problem.
How
I'm here for you, Aaron.
How would I feel if I had $1 million discretionary income? And the first thing that popped up as I got into the feeling was I would feel like I count, like I matter.
Wow.
Now, this is important, Derrick, because how many people struggling financially, seeing other people doing whatever, and feel like if I don't attain a certain level of status in our society, if I don't attain a certain level of financial abundance, I don't really count. I'm just one of the ants. I'm just, you know what I mean? Like, I think in this day and age, another reason this teachings are so important right now, like when you and I were growing up, we weren't dealing with the world's problems.
Right.
And we weren't dealing with everybody out from behind their masks. Like I was thinking about this today. Follow me on this. Social media, right? Or we know every hurricane, every shooting, every problem,
every incident.
Yeah, I mean, you can sit there and watch, you can go down this freaking Twitter rabbit hole where you're watching fights in restaurants all the time. People just acting like assholes and getting into fights in restaurants over stupid shit that doesn't even matter anyway, right? And pretty soon you think this happens all the time because you just watch 10 videos of this shit going down, right? And that stresses you. And the world has become so big and so, in some ways, oppressive because of social media and our exposure to it, that you can start to feel like I don't count. So when you said that, like, yeah, it's twofold. It's like if I had that, I'd feel like I count, but that also reveals something to me about the way I feel about myself, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I don't have $1 million in a bank account that's just discretionary income. There's part of me that feels like until I attain that, I don't matter. I don't count, right?
Right.
So which vibration, which feeling am I sending out into the field? I'm sending out into the field the vibration, the feeling, I don't really count because I don't have enough. Yeah. And it exposed in me. So here's the thing, like people think, well, I'm just going to imagine it and I'm going to feel it and then I'm going to have it. But what happens first is it has to expose in you where you've been living mentally and emotionally, right? So that's why these thought experiments are so important. So I just had to interrupt. It's like, oh yeah. That feels good. Oh, that doesn't feel good.
No, that's huge, man. That's huge because so let me just say this, that whether you have $1 million or not, Aaron, you matter.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I need to hear that right now.
I mean, you matter to your wife, you matter to your sons, you matter to me, you matter to your sister. So the thing, what I tell people is that don't tie your intrinsic worth or your intrinsic value to what it is that you think you ought to have. Whether you have abundance or not, you have value. You are abundance, irrespective of what the balance sheet says. So, first let's change our mindsets and begin to see our value, because here's the thing, manifestation, and this is something I'm learning. Manifestation has nothing to do with your desire. It has nothing to do with what your hopes or dreams are. Manifestation has to do with your alignment, your coherence. Do you first believe that you are what you're believing for? Because whatever it is that you're believing for, whatever it is that you're hoping to manifest, you're manifesting this as if you're manifesting this as you believe yourself to be. So if you believe yourself to be unworthy, if you believe yourself to be wretched, if you believe yourself to be sinful, I'm talking to you, Christians. If you believe this, you'll never have anything. But if you say, and this is one of the things, like Neville Goddard was big on affirmation. Whatever you say after I am are the two most powerful words in the English language. and I am in etymologically relates to the primordial ohm or the original sound, the original vibration. So what you're saying is when you say I am, you are attaching your belief about yourself to yourself. And so if you say I am broke, but I want money, well, the seeing yourself as broke negates your desire for money. And so what happens is you get in this endless loop, this doom loop where you're just, you know, I want money, but I can't find it. I can't seem to get it. Well, you're not getting it because you're not seeing yourself as someone as worthy of having it. Man, I started telling myself every day that wealth is comfortable with me, that wealth trusts me.
That's interesting. Let me interject.
Go ahead.
Because most people would think I should be saying I am comfortable with wealth. I trust wealth, but you reversed it. You said wealth is comfortable with me.
Correct.
Wealth trusts me. Explain to me the difference there.
So
I think it's important.
This is important because if you say I am comfortable with wealth, well, do you know that to be true? Have you experienced that? If you had the experience of wealth, then maybe you could say that and it makes sense. But what I think is that that's putting the cart before the horse, right? You want to decree certain things, like another thing, peace. I decree that peace is comfortable with me. Not that I'm comfortable with peace.
Yeah. So this is powerful because what it's invoking in me is inclusion.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to include wealth into our life, right?
Yeah.
When they say I am comfortable with wealth or peace or health or whatever. But when I say wealth is comfortable with me, it's like, oh, I'm included in that circle.
You're included in it. Correct.
Rather than trying to include something and add something to me, it's like I'm added to this new reality. I love that. I've never heard that before, Derrick.
Yeah. I mean, it
blew my mind.
I mean, this is really, really powerful stuff because
I want you to say more about this. This is blowing my mind.
You said inclusion, and I really want to double click on that because to say that I am included in something, it's a sense of identity, it's a sense of familiarity, it's a sense of certainty, right? And so, there are some people that say that certainty is not your friend, and in some regards, it's not. Certainty is not your friend, except when you are certain about your position in something. In other words, your certainty should not be of something, but it should be certainty of your position in something. See, here's the thing, like, I am blessed to be included in the number of people who you call friend and brother.
Yeah. See. Yeah. I get what you're saying, man. This is like blowing my mind because here, I work with a lot of people, that are just down on their luck for whatever reason. And I do healing work with people. And the biggest block to people's healing is, okay, yeah, healing could happen for someone else, but I'm not sure it's going to happen for me. That's an issue of inclusion.
Yeah.
And if we approach it trying to get people to include healing in their lives, and I've sat there and argued with people that, no, you're worthy, you're valuable, healing belongs to you. Back in the church, Jesus paid the price for your healing. Healing belongs to you. But it's not about that. It's about them feeling. And how many people, I'm sorry, dude, like
you said, I belong to healing. Healing doesn't belong to me.
Yeah. But how many people, like if you had Holy Ghost meetings or whatever, and people are getting blessed and whatever back in the day, but you always had the people that weren't. And how did they leave feeling? They felt leaving, or as they were leaving, they felt excluded. I wasn't included. I'm not included in the blessing. right? And so when I say wealth is comfortable with me, health is comfortable with me, it's a statement of, if they're comfortable with me, it's almost like personifying it, but in a good way, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm part of the crowd. I belong here.
I belong.
Rather than it belongs with me, I belong in it. Dude, freaking A. Transformation through conversation.
Transformation.
Growing in real time.
And bro, this is where I am now. I mean, and it is completely remodeling my life. And it's exciting. Now, you know, you and I had talked about something earlier today. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but you know, what happens is that when you are included in something, instead of trying to include something in you, you know, when you are trying to include something into you, you wind up with analysis paralysis and self-sabotage. And so you wind up speaking things about yourself that you know you shouldn't be speaking, but you do it because this sounds right. You know, there's a certain amount of faux piety that's associated with that, and you're just like, okay. But if you flip that around and you say, you know, health is comfortable with me, wealth is comfortable with me, love is comfortable with me, joy is comfortable with me, peace is comfortable with me. So now I'm saying that I'm included in all of these things. I'm not a straggler. I'm not a stranger. I'm not left behind. I'm not one of the, you know, no, this is like, what happens is that you begin to see these things as your birthright and not something to achieve.
The other thing it does from a psychological perspective is, you know, people always say, if you don't feel worthy of XYZ, you're not going to have it. Like, if you don't feel worthy of $1 million, or you don't feel worthy of, you know, and I talked about worth, like, oh, if I had $1 million, I'd matter, right?
Yep.
But here's the problem with trying to feel worthy. When I sit there and say, I'm worthy of fill in the blank, what immediately happens in me, and I don't know, I think this probably happens with most people, the frickin' catalog of weaknesses and shortcomings and like from memory, right? Like, yeah, what about this? What about when you did that? What about how you messed this up? What about how you missed that opportunity? Oh, you think you're something? But see, when you switch it around and you say, wealth is comfortable with me, health is comfortable with me, I am included. Now I'm providing, I don't, that accusation holds no ground, because it's not about me. It's about wealth. It's not about me. It's about health.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying wealth is comfortable, oh yeah, well, really? I mean, it's just totally different. Do you see what I'm saying with that?
Yeah. Now let me throw something else out here too, that because we're on a tear here, man.
This is good. This may be our best show ever.
It could be, you know, that when you know, you were talking about being God, right? You know, you were talking about this book, Ye Are Gods, right?
Yeah.
And here's the interesting thing. You know how, like, in cartoons they picture the angel on one shoulder and the demon on the other, right? Here's a mind blower, right? That you are God and you are Satan. Because the God in you will talk about your creative prowess. The God in you will talk about goodness. You know what you were talking about, the other lady that we're gonna talk about in another episode. That, you know, that when you start saying, okay, these are the things that I am included in, and because I'm included in these things, I'm worthy by default. I don't have to try. I don't have to work. I don't have to stress. I don't have to pray. I don't have to confess. I don't have to do anything, because I realize that I am in that set, right? But the Satan in you will always accuse you. That's why the word Hashatan, in Aramaic, literally means accuser.
Yeah.
So you are your own worst accuser. You are your greatest champion, your greatest influencer, but you are also your greatest critic and your greatest judge. And the Satan in you is always going to remind you that you don't deserve this.
But here's what's so powerful from a psychological perspective, right? We have this thing they just recently, and by recently, in the last 20 years or whatever it's been, discovered mirror neurons, right? So there are certain traits that my adopted children picked up from me, the way they move, the way they talk, because they have mirror neurons that they're learning by what they're seeing, not so much by what they're hearing, but their brain is taking in and it's being reflected back out, right? So what happens to a lot of us is that we go through traumatic relational experiences because we don't know ourselves by ourselves. We know ourselves through how we are mirrored through other people, in the same way that I can't see what I look like unless I'm looking at myself on the screen, but I have to look in a mirror, right? In the old days, for sure. And so that's how I know what I look like. And so socially and psychologically, as you're developing yourself, your mirror neurons are telling you who you are, right? So when I have experiences where I feel excluded, where I feel unworthy, then that begins to mirror in me and develop my sense of self, right? So whatever it was, and the more emotionally powerful the experience, the more impactful it is upon my sense of self. So if I got bullied in middle school, or I really screwed up in high school, or I had these really humiliating experiences, or I was abused as a child, or I grew up in a chaotic, traumatic home, I'm developing my sense of self based on other people. So when you say wealth includes me, peace includes me, health includes me, it takes that same principle, right?
Yep.
And it works on my sense of self in a different way. Whereas if I'm saying I am wealthy, I am healthy, I am important, I am influential, that can have an effect, but it gives the Hasatan, the Satan in me, leverage. Oh yeah?
Yep.
What about this? What about that? What about that? Because I'm making it about me. But when I say wealth includes me, I'm making it about wealth. When I say health includes me, I'm making it about health.
Right.
And that inner Satan, that inner accusing voice, it has nowhere to go. I can just see my own demon on the shoulder, like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And then you self-sabotage.
No. What I'm saying is, when you change the locus of control, when you change the location from it's me having wealth to wealth is having me.
Yeah.
That demon on your shoulder doesn't have anything to say.
Correct.
Shit, if wealth includes you, what the fuck am I going to say?
Yep. There was something you said in the green room about negating the negative voice.
Yeah.
And when we do this, we say, I am part of this, that I am included in this. That negates the negative voice, because when you, instead of saying, well, I want to be healed, no, I'm part of healing.
Yep.
I'm included.
Dude, you may have just changed my life. Like my whole life.
Well, dude, listen, I'm telling you, I have been on this manifestation track, and you had said something to me that was so honoring, humbling you, that you said that I could be like the next Reverend Ike. And bro, let me say this. First of all, and I don't know, this could be self-sabotaging, but I'm like, nah, I'm not that guy. But here's the thing, that if I could share something with the world, like Reverend Ike did, that helps people break free of the things that restrain them. I think about this, right? I'm going to pull out a section of the Bible. And when Jesus came to his disciples, they were in a locked room. and the room was locked from the outside. So nobody inside the room could unlock the door to let anyone in. And so Jesus comes into the room.
Mm.
Now, why is this important? I think that this is like a lesson in quantum physics. It's a lesson in manifestation. It's a lot of lessons. This is like one of these things that's like an onion. It has so many layers that it's insane. But I'm gonna touch on a couple of them, because first of all, for Jesus to have been able to transcend material reality, that meant he had to be vibrating at a higher frequency than the matter that separated him from his disciples. So what happens is that when you are fully persuaded, and I think that this is the lesson of the Christ, is that you believe to the point where you believe where failure is not possible. And I think, like there are sayings that, that we only use 5 or 10% of our capacity, or our brain capacity, and there's a lot of science that says that that's not true, but we do know that there are parts of the brain that we don't use. Now, what would happen if we were able to use that? Would you be able to be divinely healed? Would you tap into wealth? Unlimited wealth? Would you tap into unlimited peace or joy? What could you tap into if you believed you could not fail?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, like, back in the day, people would say, there was a colloquialism that says "fake it till you make it," and we used to say in the Word of Faith community, "faith it till you make it."
Yeah.
And I think that both of those are wrong. You know what I would say? Believe it until you become it.
Yeah. My computer's about to die here. Let me plug it in. So I think the way I've reframed that, because fake it till you make it, I hate that. And because I understand what they're saying, but what you're really doing is practicing a new way of being and practicing a new way of living, right? You're not faking anything. Is the kid learning to play the piano, is he faking it when he's practicing? Is the kid on the basketball court faking it when they're practicing? They're not faking it, they're becoming it, right? Through repetition.
Yeah.
And so while I understand the whole fake it till you make it, I don't like it because we have such a negative connotation with faking. But like, you got to practice a new way of thinking. You got to, like, some of the negative thinking that we have, it's just a habit. It's just, we're habituated to a certain way of thinking. We're conditioned, we're programmed to think a certain way. And the more we do it, the stronger those neural pathways become in the brain. So when you're faking it, you're just practicing a different way of thinking, a different way of feeling, a different way of believing. And when you do that, you change your future. You change your future timeline, because you're not the same person now that's, moving through time. To bring us back to the beginning of what you were talking about with time and bringing your present or your future into the now as cause and effect. In other words, my future is causing my present rather than my past causing my present.
Correct.
Which I love.
Yep. So, going forward into Neville's teaching, we talked about feeling the relief or certainty of fulfillment, and that just triggered us, man. We went off on a really big tangent, but the next one is to repeat this process until the outcome feels natural.
Mm.
Because one of the things that if you don't feel like this is something that has already happened to you, that you've already become, if you don't feel that way, you need to go back and redo the process until it does, until the outcome feels natural. Because one of the things is that we'll say, oh well, I believe, but then you say, man, what all, and you start thinking about all the negative things that will happen if you get what you want.
Yeah.
So you have to repeat all of this process, identification, scene mapping, relaxation, scenic experience, and relief, and you have to complete. I mean, lather, rinse, and repeat until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think a lot of people kind of fall short here, is that they don't stay in the process. It's like you do this and it doesn't work, and you're like, well, that's what everybody was telling me, and one of the biggest voices that we have to learn to silence is what people think of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get caught up in that. Our ego says, well, I don't want to be thought bad of, I don't want to be thought of negatively, and so as a result you develop a way of action that is people pleasing instead of manifesting.
Yeah.
And so I've come to the point now, and this is a hard one because I deal with this. It always comes back like, what will people say? And so when you were talking about this lady who taught negation,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, dude, I need to do this because I need to learn how to silence. I need to negate that critical voice. What people think about, because my interpretation of what people think about me will cause me to self-sabotage. And the reality is, what people think of me is none of my goddamn business.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the anticipation of what you think people are going to think about you if you take a certain course of action.
Yep.
I'm anticipating how they're going to respond, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because when you talk about this memory and imagination of the future, your own internal timeline, right? Like, I'm remembering the past, or at least we think we are, and I'm imagining the future. And what they've found in brain scans is it's the exact same part of the brain that becomes active when you're remembering and when you're imagining the future. And so what they have hypothesized is that your brain doesn't really know the difference between memory and imagination of the future.
That's right.
And so when you're talking about practicing it over and over and over again, and Jesus, when he said, whatsoever things you desire when you pray, believe that you have received them.
Yep.
It's my understanding from the Greek construction, believe that it happened in the past.
Right.
So when you imagine a new future, when you imagine a new outcome, in some regards, you do it over and over and over again. Now it's becoming the memory of who you are. Yeah. So now you're acting on a new memory of who you are that's not conditioned by the past, but it's conditioned by the future.
Correct.
Which is really powerful and mind-blowing to think about.
Yep, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And here's the thing, like, we talked about Neville Goddard, we talked about his teaching. What does he mean to modern humanity? Because this is a guy, I think he passed away in 1972.
Yeah.
So he's been gone a long time. But there are people that are really, digging into the substance of his teaching, because they believe that there's some relevance to this. And when you look at believing something that is present, even though it has not occurred, that owes a debt to Neville Goddard.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was one of his core teachings.
Yep.
And then the other thing is that, believing that you are worthy. I can't say this enough, because Aaron, if there's anything that has sabotaged my manifestation, in my life throughout the history of Derrick Day, it has been that I'm not worthy, or what if I'm wrong? What if, or people are going to think bad things about me, and I think about all of these different things, and these things are self-sabotaging. But what I'm learning to do is I'm learning to silence that voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I'll say to everybody that's watching is that thoughts happen.
Mm-hmm.
We think literally thousands of thoughts a day. I think they said that the average human thinks like 3 to 5,000 thoughts, individual thoughts per day. What if you were to treat each one of these thoughts as a passing phenomenon?
Mm.
That I look at the thought, I recognize the thought, I recognize the root of the thought, but I don't judge it. I don't say this is good or this is bad, this is helpful or this is harmful. I just simply say, I see it. And I recognize that it's passing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the important thing about that is that, and this I could be wrong on, but I'm going to say it anyway, that if you see that the thought can benefit you, has relevance to you, or resonates with you, then maybe you should stop and meditate
Mm-hmm.
on that.
Yeah.
But when the thought is harmful to you, hurtful to you, causes negative emotions in you, then give it the observer effect and say, yeah, I see you. I recognize you, but I see that you're leaving too.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can do that, I think that we as individuals and as a collective begin to make what Neville Goddard taught relevant.
Yeah. I think if we think about positive and negative thinking from a strictly mathematical perspective rather than a perspective of judgment, because you're saying don't judge the thought. Judgment is good or bad, right? And we have a tendency to equate positive with good and negative with bad.
Yeah.
But that's not how mathematics works. Mathematics works with what do I want taken away from this equation versus what do I want added to this equation, right?
Yep.
So we can just look at our life as the equation of our thoughts, which is kind of what Neville and the New Thought people taught. Whatever you're experiencing is equal to the thoughts that you've been thinking. Then I could reframe positive and negative in my life without adding a good or bad judgment to it. And I can have a thought pass through my mind and I can say, is this something that I want included in my life?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something I want added to my life? Positive? Is this a positive thought? So how do I know it's a positive thought? It's something that I want included in my life.
Yep.
So then I take it and I add it to the equation. I meditate on it. I dwell on it. Is this something that I don't want in my life? Then it's a negative thought.
Right.
And so then it needs to be subtracted from my life, right?
Yep.
And so there's various different ways we can work out the subtraction, the negation, the negative, the negation of that thought in my life. And so Sunday, it's funny, this leads into what I'm thinking about for, my next live video is talking about the power of negative thinking, but not negative thinking from the standpoint of, oh, this isn't going to work. I'm a piece of shit. Life sucks.
I see where you're going.
But negative thinking from the standpoint of what do I need to negate about my thinking in my life? My parents told me I was a piece of shit. Mine didn't, but I'm just saying, people think this. My parents told me I wasn't worth anything. Well, negate that thought.
Yep.
I'm not included in wealth. Negate that thought. Yeah, but you haven't looked at my bank account. Negate that thought.
Right.
Power of negative thinking.
I like it. And I think that, this is a funny thing. Like when you think about mathematics, you think about positive numbers and negative numbers.
Right.
And you don't ascribe a value to the numbers. In other words, excuse me, that one set of numbers is not superior to another. And because there's some people think, oh, positive numbers are superior. No, they're not. You know, and then when you get into in the physics, protons are positively charged and neutrons and electrons are negatively charged. And really it's the negative charge that determines the bondability of any atom or any element to another. It's not the positivity. So therefore is positivity in and of itself good? Is it bad? And the answer is neither. It simply is that the negatively charged particles within an atom are what make covalent bonds and things like that possible.
Yeah. Yep. It brings neutrality to it, right? Which goes back to what you're saying, like let those thoughts rise without judging them.
Yep.
This isn't good or bad, but it can be positive or negative. And then it depends on what I want the equation of my life to be.
Yep.
What's the sum that I'm trying to arrive at?
That's right. And so I always ask people, because in my line of work, when I go and meet with a customer, I'm asking, what problem are you trying to solve? Where does it hurt? Where are the pain points? What are we trying to achieve here? And I think that we need to do that same sort of self-examination, self-introspection, and we ask ourselves, where does it hurt?
Yeah.
Or what is it that what problem am I trying to solve for?
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know, man. I think that's a good place to land the plane.
I do too.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to say, because I'm thinking about this too, like the whole giving and receiving part, right? Like give and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaking together, and running over.
Yep.
I think the way we worked that out for some people was like, if I'm giving, I'm subtracting from myself.
Right.
And if that's our attitude about giving, then we're going to inherit more subtraction.
That's
people
good.
gave themselves broke, right?
Yep.
If I look at it, I'm adding value to someone else.
Yep.
Like my kiddo was telling me today that he was out and he was at Chipotle and he saw a homeless person that was buying, getting a meal for their kid, but not for themselves. And so he, bought him lunch or whatever for the woman. Well, what did he do for her? He subtracted from his pocket, but actually he's part of an addition. You see what I'm like? He's adding to her life, adding value there. And then when you look at it that way, then the multiplication, the good measure pressed down, shaking together and running over can begin to come into your own life based on, I think, Derrick, I just think that's the way the universe is set up. I think that's the way it works, right? Yep. But if I'm lamenting, oh my God, I've got to give, or I don't really want to, maybe that's why the Bible said God loves a cheerful giver,
Yeah.
Because are you excited about the opportunity to add value to someone else's life, or are you lamenting the fact that you're subtracting from your own bottom line?
Yep. That's, man.
And then you could look at it this way. If I'm consuming, am I adding value or am I subtracting? The way I see it, like, am I subtracting from other people? So, I know a lot of counselors, a lot of, people that help people, and they have such a hard time asking for payment. Or, we talked about marketing, self-promotion. Like, if I feel like I'm subtracting from someone else because of my own gain, and I'm working in that same side of the equation. Whereas if I look at it as, I'm adding value, who can I help today? I'm adding value to their life and they're adding value to my life. Now I'm getting on the addition, the positive side of things with just the way I think spiritually that money works and money flows in the world.
Yeah.
So I think we should land the plane, but I just had to throw that part in.
No, dude, that was essential. We needed that. We needed that. So I put the bird in the air, man. I'm gonna let you bring it back to earth.
All right. So this, really, literally for me, this has been just an incredible podcast and episode for me. And I think people will really enjoy this. So if you take time to watch this, thank you for spending time with us. I hope it added value to your life. And Derrick, I love you, man.
Love you too, man.
Me in my life, and appreciate you. And with that, I'm going to say peace out. Peace and hair grease, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a great next week, and we'll all see you next week. Who knows what we'll talk about on the next episode of Growing in Real Time, Transformation Through Conversation. I know I was transformed tonight. I really believe I was. That was good stuff, man.
Oh no, man! The feeling's mutual. I mean, that was literally a Growing in Real Time episode.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, everybody. Peace out. Take care.
Love y'all. Be good. Love you, Aaron. Talk to you later.